Have you ever noticed how some people around you seem to possess unshakable confidence, a strength that never wavers, a certainty that is never questioned? Perhaps you yourself have admired these people, wished you had that same apparent solidity, that capacity to face any storm without showing fragility. But what if I told you that much of this strength we see is merely a carefully rehearsed performance? What if the circumstances rapidly approaching were capable of revealing in a brutal and inevitable way who has always pretended to be strong and who possesses genuine resilience built through honest acceptance of their own vulnerabilities? We are about to witness one of the greatest revelations about human nature that our generation has ever seen, and this will happen much sooner than we imagine. History teaches us that moments of greatest pressure are those that separate real strength from performative strength. During the Great Depression, we saw apparently invincible magnates crumble before the first waves of economic instability, while simple people who never proclaimed their resistance demonstrated a surprising capacity for adaptation and survival. In World War II, leaders who built empires based on intimidation and projection of absolute power revealed themselves to be cowards when confronted with the reality of destruction, while ordinary individuals who always acknowledged their human fragility found reserves of courage they didn't know they possessed. The pattern repeats throughout human history. Crises do not create character, they reveal it. And we are rapidly approaching a crisis that will be different from all others humanity has ever faced. What makes the period we are entering so unique is the convergence of multiple disruptive forces that will simultaneously pressure all aspects of human experience. We are not talking merely about an economic recession, a pandemic, or an isolated war. We are entering an era where artificial intelligence is irreversibly redesigning the job market, where climate change is forcing massive migrations and transforming the planet's geography, where political polarization is threatening the very foundations of democracy, and where the digital revolution is fundamentally altering the nature of reality and truth. Each of these forces, by itself, would be sufficient to test the limits of human endurance. Together, they create a pressure environment that will expose every flaw in our emotional armor, every crack in our social masks, every contradiction between who we say we are and who we really are. Fake strength has always thrived in stable and predictable environments. It is easy to maintain a facade of invincibility when the rules of the game remain constant, when paths to success are clear, when social and economic structures provide a reliable stage for our performances of power. But we are entering a world where these structures are simultaneously crumbling. The executive who built his identity around his ability to dominate meetings and manipulate corporate hierarchies will discover that these skills have become irrelevant when artificial intelligence can execute his functions with greater efficiency. The influencer who based her authority on followers and engagement metrics will see her digital empire collapse when increasingly sophisticated algorithms expose the artificiality of her audience and the superficiality of her content. The politician who built his career on empty speeches and grandiose promises will be confronted with problems so complex and urgent that no rhetoric will be sufficient to mask his fundamental incompetence. At the same time, technology is creating a level of transparency and interconnection that makes it increasingly difficult to maintain false personas for long periods. We live in an era where every word can be recorded, every action can be documented, every inconsistency can be instantly exposed to millions of people. Social media, which initially seemed to offer new opportunities to build idealized identities, are revealing themselves to be traps for those who have grown accustomed to living double lives. The person who projects success while struggling with crushing debt, the leader who preaches family values while repeatedly betraying his family, the expert who sells confidence while being consumed by anxiety and self-doubt. All these individuals are navigating a minefield where every misstep can result in devastating and permanent exposure. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of the period we are entering is the way it will test our capacity for genuine adaptation versus our dependence on external structures of validation. Fake strength is, in essence, a form of outsourcing self-esteem. People who pretend to be strong have usually built their confidence on external pillars: social status, material wealth, public approval, positions of authority, or relationships that feed their ego. When these external structures begin to waver, as they inevitably will in the turbulent environment we are entering, the entire house of cards of the fake personality collapses all at once. On the other hand, individuals who have developed an honest understanding of their own limitations and who have built their resilience through self-knowledge and acceptance of human vulnerability possess internal resources that remain accessible regardless of external circumstances. The fundamental difference between real strength and fake strength lies in the relationship with uncertainty and failure. Fake strength requires constant control and consistent success to maintain itself. It is a performance that cannot admit errors, that cannot show doubts, that cannot acknowledge limitations without risking total collapse of the constructed persona. This creates a rigidity that becomes increasingly unsustainable as reality becomes more complex and unpredictable. Real strength, on the other hand, is built through direct experience of human fragility and the discovery that it is possible to survive and thrive even when we don't have all the answers, even when we make mistakes, even when we need to ask for help or admit ignorance. This flexibility and honesty become invaluable resources in a world where change is the only constant. We are witnessing the first signs of this great revelation in real time. Observe how business leaders who seemed invincible are being exposed as frauds or incompetents when their companies face real challenges. See how influencers who built empires based on projecting perfect happiness are being unmasked as deeply unhappy individuals who sell illusions they don't even believe themselves. Notice how politicians who always proclaimed to have all the solutions are being revealed as completely unprepared to deal with complex problems that require humility, collaboration, and nuanced thinking, instead of slogans and theatricality, What makes this particularly fascinating is that we are not talking about malicious or intentional exposure. Reality has simply become too complex for superficial performances to be sustained indefinitely. It is as if the universe itself is applying a stress test to humanity. And those who build their identities on false foundations are failing spectacularly. It is no coincidence that we are seeing a dramatic increase in levels of anxiety, depression, and nervous breakdown among people who previously seemed to have everything under control. The pressure of maintaining a false persona in an increasingly transparent and unpredictable world is becoming psychologically unsustainable. At the same time, we are observing a fascinating phenomenon among those who have always been open about their struggles and limitations. People who never pretended to be perfect, who always acknowledged their fragilities and consciously worked to develop genuine resilience, are demonstrating a remarkable capacity to navigate these turbulent waters. They are not immune to stress or difficulties, but they possess the internal tools and mental flexibility necessary to adapt and find new paths when old ones become obsolete. Their strength does not depend on favorable external circumstances, but on a deep understanding of their own human nature and a mature acceptance of uncertainty as a fundamental condition of existence. Technology is accelerating this process of revelation in ways we have barely begun to understand. Artificial intelligence is not just transforming the job market, it is exposing the often superficial nature of our expertise and authority. Entire professions that depended more on status and performance than on real knowledge and skill are being automated or revealed as unnecessary. This forces a fundamental recalibration of our values and identities. Who are you when your titles, your positions, and your external achievements become irrelevant? If your answer to this question generates panic or existential emptiness, you may be discovering that much of what you considered your strength was, in fact, an elaborate performance based on external structures that are crumbling. Social media, which initially seemed to democratize fame and recognition, are revealing themselves to be cruel laboratories of psychological testing. The constant pressure to curate a perfect image, to maintain impossible levels of positivity and success, to compete in an increasingly saturated attention economy, is leading many people to burnout, and the revelation that their real lives are radically different from the versions they project online. The contrast between reality and performance is becoming so extreme that maintaining the facade requires psychological resources that many simply do not possess. But perhaps the deepest aspect of this revelation is the way it is forcing a fundamental re-evaluation of what it means to be strong in the first place. The strength that our culture has traditionally celebrated, based on dominance, control, absolute independence, and emotional impermeability, is revealing itself to be not just unsustainable, but counterproductive in an interconnected and constantly changing world. True strength, we are discovering, may include the capacity to admit ignorance, ask for help, express vulnerability, genuinely collaborate, and adapt humbly when our assumptions prove incorrect. This does not mean we should glorify weakness or abandon aspirations of growth and accomplishment. It means recognizing that the most durable and adaptable strength comes from a foundation of honest self-knowledge, intellectual humility, developed emotional intelligence, and a mature understanding of our fundamental interdependence as human beings. These qualities, which have often been undervalued in a culture obsessed with images of solitary invincibility, are revealing themselves to be the most valuable resources for navigating the complexities of the modern world. The irony is that those who always admitted their limitations and consciously worked to develop genuine resilience were often seen as less impressive or powerful than those who projected absolute confidence. But as circumstances become more challenging, this dynamic is inverting. Humility that once seemed like weakness is revealing itself to be wisdom. Vulnerability that once seemed inadequate is revealing itself to be courage. Flexibility that once seemed like indecision is revealing itself to be adaptive intelligence. We are entering a period where these distinctions will become not just visible, but crucial for survival and prosperity. Organizations, communities, and societies that have learned to value authenticity over performance, substance over image, collaboration over dominance, and adaptability over rigidity will be those that thrive. Those that remain trapped in old models of authority and power based on projection and intimidation will discover that these models have not only become obsolete, but actively harmful in an environment that demands transparency, agility, and genuine cooperation. Let me pause here to ask you directly, when you look at your own life, how much of your confidence and sense of strength depends on things that are outside your control? Your job, your bank account, other people's approval, your social position? Have you ever felt forced to maintain an image that doesn't completely correspond to your internal reality? I know these are difficult questions, and many of us prefer not to examine too closely these sensitive areas of our lives. But your honesty about these questions may be exactly what determines whether you will thrive or struggle in the years to come. If this recognition resonates with you, share in the comments. I recognize that part of my strength depends on completing with your honest experience. Your vulnerability may be the example someone needs to begin their own journey toward authenticity. What we are witnessing is not just a temporary crisis that will pass, but a fundamental transformation in the nature of human society. The structures that allowed elaborate performances of power and control to prosper are being replaced by systems that reward transparency, adaptability, and genuine collaboration. This is not necessarily a change being imposed by some external authority, but a natural evolution in response to the growing complexity and interconnection of the modern world. Systems based on rigid hierarchies and controlled information simply cannot process and respond to the quantity and speed of change that characterizes our current environment. The information revolution has democratized not just access to knowledge, but also the capacity to verify and validate claims of expertise and authority. An expert who built his reputation on credentials and positions can be quickly exposed as incompetent if his predictions prove consistently incorrect or if his explanations do not withstand public scrutiny. On the other hand, individuals without formal credentials, but with genuine understanding and capacity to communicate valuable insights, can quickly gain legitimate recognition and influence. Merit is becoming more important than status, substance, more important than performance. This shift is creating tremendous opportunities for those who are willing to embrace authenticity and develop real competencies, but is simultaneously destroying the power structures that many individuals used to sustain inflated personas. Executives who depended on intimidation and political positioning are discovering that these tactics have not only become ineffective, but counterproductive in environments where collaboration and transparency are necessary to solve complex problems. Leaders who build their careers on charisma and empty rhetoric are being exposed when confronted with challenges that require real technical knowledge and practical implementation capacity. The speed of this change is catching many by surprise. Structures that seemed solid and permanent are crumbling in a matter of months or even weeks. Companies that dominated their industries for decades are becoming irrelevant overnight. Public figures who seemed unquestionable are being unmasked and forgotten with a rapidity that would have been unthinkable in previous eras. The acceleration of change means there is no time for gradual adaptation or smooth transition. Either you possess the internal resources to navigate this turbulence, or you fall behind in a brutal and definitive way. But here lies an extraordinary opportunity that many people have not yet fully recognized. This period of revelation and restructuring is also a period of redistribution of power and influence. When old structures crumble, spaces are created for new forms of leadership and authority to emerge. Individuals who were previously marginalized because they did not fit traditional models of success and power are discovering that their unique perspectives and authenticity have become valuable resources. People who have always been honest about their struggles and limitations are being sought as mentors and leaders because their credibility and relatability have become more important than projections of perfection. The fundamental question that each of us needs to confront is not whether these changes will happen. They're already happening. But whether we will consciously participate in this transformation or be passively dragged along by it. This requires radical honesty with yourself about who you really are versus who you have been pretending to be. It requires the courage to abandon aspects of your identity that were built on false foundations, even if this means going through a period of uncertainty and vulnerability. It requires developing new competencies and perspectives that are relevant to the emerging world, not to the world that is disappearing. The process of distinguishing real strength from fake strength in your own life can be uncomfortable, but it is essential. Start by asking difficult questions. When do you feel most anxious or threatened? Is it when your expertise is questioned? When your authority is challenged? When your achievements are minimized? These may be signs that aspects of your identity are built on foundations that are not as solid as you believed. On the other hand, in which situations do you feel genuinely confident and capable, regardless of external recognition or circumstances? These may indicate areas where you have developed real competencies and self-knowledge. Real strength has certain distinctive characteristics that differentiate it from performance. It is sustainable over time and through varying circumstances. It does not require constant validation or external support structures to maintain itself. It includes the capacity to admit error and ignorance without collapse of self-esteem. It allows for genuine collaboration and continuous learning. It is flexible and adaptable instead of rigid and defensive. It is based on intrinsic competencies and values instead of comparisons and relative status. It includes the capacity to find meaning and purpose even in difficult or uncertain circumstances. Developing these qualities does not happen overnight, but the period we are entering offers accelerated opportunities for growth and transformation. The pressure and uncertainty that are exposing fake strength are also creating conditions that can catalyze the development of genuine strength for those who are willing to engage consciously in the process. This may include seeking honest feedback about your true capabilities and limitations, developing practical skills that are relevant to the real challenges you face, building relationships based on mutual authenticity instead of mutual impression, and cultivating internal resources such as mindfulness, emotional resilience, and clarity of values. The transformation we are witnessing is also redefining the criteria by which we measure success and value. Traditional metrics such as accumulated wealth, social status, or public recognition are becoming less relevant than indicators such as capacity for adaptation, quality of relationships, contribution to collective solutions, and personal satisfaction and meaning. This does not mean that material aspirations or professional recognition are inherently problematic, but that they become sustainable only when built upon a foundation of authenticity and real competence. We are seeing this manifest in multiple areas of society simultaneously. In the business world, companies that built their strategies on sophisticated marketing and public relations instead of genuinely valuable products and services are rapidly losing to competitors who focus on substance. In politics, candidates who depend on charisma and empty promises are being challenged by individuals who demonstrate real competence and a track record of effective implementation. In the field of education and personal development, authorities who sell quick formulas and superficial solutions are being replaced by mentors who offer guidance based on genuine experience and deep understanding. The irony is that many people who always felt inadequate or insecure because they could not maintain the performances that our traditional culture valued are discovering that their struggles and honesty about these struggles have become valuable resources. The person who always admitted their financial difficulties is better prepared to navigate economic instability than the one who always pretended prosperity. The individual who was always open about their mental health challenges possesses tools and perspectives that become invaluable when others finally confront their own psychological vulnerabilities. The person who never pretended to have all the answers is better equipped to learn and adapt than the one who built their identity around always being right. If these reflections have touched on something you have been feeling, but perhaps have not found words to express, know that you are not alone. We are all navigating this transformation together, and your willingness to be honest about your own struggles and growth is not weakness, but courage. By joining us in this ongoing dialogue, you connect with a growing community of people who are committed to authenticity instead of performance, to substance instead of image, to real growth instead of superficial gratification. This is not just an academic conversation about social trends, but a practical exploration of how to live with more integrity and less suffering in a rapidly changing world. If you wish to continue this journey of self-knowledge and genuine development, subscribe so that we can explore together not just what is happening around us, but how we can respond in ways that allow us to thrive instead of merely survive the transformations that are coming. The future belongs to those who have the courage to be real in a world that has valued performance. The great revelation of 2026 will not just be about who always pretended to be strong, but about the collective discovery that the deepest and most sustainable strength comes from honest acceptance of our shared humanity, with all its imperfections, uncertainties, and possibilities for continuous growth. The question is not whether you will pass the test that is coming, but whether you will have the wisdom to stop pretending to pass tests that never mattered and start preparing for the challenges that really define what it means to be a resilient, authentic, and contributory human being in the world we are creating together.